Welcome to The Planet Forward with Preetha, conversations for a greener future, the place where we ignite discussions and uncover innovations driving us towards sustainability. Every episode, join your host Preetha as we explore the stories, ideas, and pioneers making a real difference in our world. Get ready to be inspired, learn, and be a part of the change that propels us forward to a greener tomorrow.
Welcome to today's episode of Planet Forward with Preetha, Conversations for a Greener Future. I'm your host, Preetha Prabhakar, and joining us today is Mr. Chandrashekhar Chincholkar, the founder and CEO of CMK Advisors LLP based in Pune. Mr. Chincholkar brings over 3 decades of robust experience in corporate finance, capital markets, investment banking, consulting, and manufacturing. Recently, he has pivoted to focusing intensely on sustainability services, offering ESG training, roadmaps, consulting, and even integrating these crucial strategies into mergers and acquisitions. His work spans significant global markets, having led numerous roadshows and funding initiatives across India and abroad. His recent engagements include addressing G20 linked events on pressing topics like climate finance and green hydrogen, truly marking him as a pivotal figure in advancing sustainability and innovation in business practices. Mr. Chandrashekhar, it's an honor to have you with us today.
My pleasure, Preetha. It's good to talk to you, and let's look forward to the questions.
Awesome. Thank you. So the first question I definitely want to ask you is, after going through your very elaborate profile. So it's about your career journey and motivations, right? So Mr. Chandrashekhar, you've had a prolific career spanning over 33 years across multiple domains. What inspired you to start CMK Advisors LLP, and how does it reflect your vision for the future of business consulting?
Yeah, thank you, Preetha. See, my career started in early 1990 after I passed out, cost accounting, and then I qualified as a company secretary, and then obviously the further, course of education that I've taken. During the early part of my career, it was more focused on, corporate finance and capital markets. Initially, major part was corporate finance, where we used to do, project funding with various, institutions of repute in India, and take projects to them, and ensure that the client gets the project funded. My capital market journey started in 2001-2, where I started working for a multinational boutique brokerage firm, and then it all basically went towards conducting roadshows both on the domestic front as well as the international front for companies in Singapore, Hong Kong. So my area of work during those capital market days used to be serving clients both in India, Singapore, Hong Kong, as well as the US. So I used to do calls for clients during the daytime. At the same time, I used to service clients in the US in the nighttime, doing 1.5 to 2 hours of daily calls. So it was a very fruitful journey. And then the consulting part started in the last 10, 11 years, where it was more towards how do you guide mid-sized growth companies in terms of how do you look at business problems and how they can actually address these kind of business problems, because mid-sized companies typically face problems in terms of how they grow, what are the management challenges. At the same time, financing is always an issue, because they always have limitation of capital, because they're probably the first or the second generation of entrepreneurs. So looking at that, and then I got a chance to be part of various committees at CII in terms of energy, environment, and automobile and auto components, and then also part of the future battery committees. So during those experiences, and also being part of the CSR committee of the Institute of Company Secretaries, the passion was really towards environment and nature, and that actually led to really more interesting work in terms of CSR initially, where I was part of an advisory board of a green NGO in Pune, which was doing large amount of desilting work and ensuring that the water capacity of Pune city, overall increases because of the desilting work that they were doing, and that led to more focused work in terms of getting involved with electric mobility, clean technologies, and then doing consulting work for various companies through a large multinational company. So that actually prompted me to really think about as to what is really lacking in terms of the offerings in the market. And having been associated with environmental, social, and governance consulting area previously, it was obviously a natural extension because these guidelines were getting mandatory from financial year 23-24 onwards in India. And obviously the tier one corporates have their strength in terms of bigger teams and people on board so that they can address sustainability. But obviously the tier one, tier two suppliers who are smaller or mid-sized companies will definitely need a significant amount of learning and road mapping, as at the same time handholding to basically ensure that they really move on the path to sustainability, because it is just not the top companies who have to address sustainability. The supply chain also is a very critical and important factor because they address the scope 3 concerns for most of the large companies. So that's an area which I thought I could possibly initially look at doing things. And in the last 45 days since I've started on my own, I've been doing significant amount of training work for companies, and got a mandate also for implementation of ESG program for a mid-size auto components company. So this is how things are actually shaped up in the last 45 days, as well as whatever work has been done in the last 5-6 years. So I think it is a good way to begin and probably look at more work in the future, because ESG is also something that will drive the fundraise for many companies because of supply chain issues. At the same time, it will also drive the mergers and acquisition platform or scenarios, because most of the global M&As are actually falling apart because of ESG issues on platter for some of these tier one, tier two companies. So that's my
Awesome.
journey in the last 33
33
years. Yeah.
years. That's phenomenal, from what you started into cost accounting and how you've kind of transitioned yourself and then went to ESG. And you
Yeah.
rightfully said, right? Especially the scope 3 calculations is extremely crucial, and mid-sized companies and especially the supply chain, that is actually what causes that. So you kind of identified a niche wherein there is a problem statement, and you're ensuring that that's getting addressed as well. So I think that's a very wise and brilliant approach, because the entire ecosystem needs to be educated. It cannot be just the top 100 or the multinational companies, but you'll have to look at the mid-size and mid to small size companies as well. So that's a very brilliant way of doing it. So now I think it's a perfect pivot into the next question I have. So expertise in ESG and renewable energy. So you worked extensively in ESG and renewable energies such as solar projects and green hydrogen. Could you share how these experiences have shaped your approach to sustainability in business?
Yeah. See, it is important to understand what goes under ESG, and the bigger part of ESG is the environment part. Social
Very
side,
true.
India is relatively better off because corporate social responsibility norms started in India in 2013. The rules were implemented from 2014, and corporates have a reasonably good amount of experience in terms of handling social aspects of related to business. Governance, is relatively better off in India because we started with clause 49, a listing agreement. Then we moved to LODR in 2015, and most of the large listed companies are following the guidelines, including the company law guidelines, independence of the board and what should be the composition of board, how many independent directors they should have. So these two areas of social and governance have been relatively well taken care of. Obviously, every day is a day of improvement and day of learning for all of us, because we are a growing economy. So we are trying to grow from say $4 trillion maybe to $10 trillion in the next 7-8 years, and then maybe much larger economy by the end of century, freedom of century of freedom of India. So looking at all that, I think environment was the much critical and pivotal issue for most of the companies. And when you talk about environment, the guidelines or the norms really talk about what kind of SOx, NOx, and particulate matter emissions are there in respective companies and how they can be addressed. So when you really want to talk about addressing these emissions, there are three major ways to look at how these emissions can be addressed. One is your electricity-based emissions, where you actually use fossil fuel like coal to generate power. Second is process-related emissions, which are basically using again coal or coke or furnace oil or whatever in terms of generating that heat or energy to process various kinds of material. And then third part is the mobility or the movement part. So electricity becomes prominent because that's an easier part to be handled. Process side emissions are very difficult because it actually involves change of technology in some way or the other, and it is more capex oriented, where the rewards or the results or the ROI could be deferred to a large number of it could be deferred to be beyond 5, 6, 7 years. So corporates typically look at when they have to address concerns of their own cash flows, at the same time address concerns of the return to shareholders or stakeholders. Obviously they need to keep generating cash flows on a regular basis. So and it is important that they should look at projects which can be done earlier, and also help them in terms of path towards sustainability. So, when you talk about electric mobility, the battery costs were significantly higher in the initial years, even till last 6, 8 months before the battery costs were significantly higher. Last 6, 8 months, the battery costs have significantly come down. But still, if you take, a typical public movement, a 9-meter or a 12-meter bus, the cost of battery used to be in the range of 45 to 50%. Obviously, the cost has now fallen down. But looking at such a high cost of battery, even looking at the comparable cost of internal combustion engine bus for public transport or unemployed transport, it was difficult for companies to really take a decision, because the cost difference were significantly higher at 50 to 60% level. So pricing that into the rental part of running the bus for employees was always challenging for companies, and that's why they were actually finding it difficult to really move ahead. So
Okay.
electric mobility achieving targets is something which is possible at the individual level, because you and me can definitely go for an electric car and pay for the rentals or the EMIs, because most all of us will get individually rated because of our own salary income or business income. But for companies, the primary importance is the cost factor. The first part, as I said, electricity is the most important parameter, because India has significantly in India, electricity is basically a concurrent subject under constitution, and because of that, both state and central government has the powers to create laws, and obviously follow as per their own requirements of the respective states. And because of that, whatever large number of states we have, different states have some or the other differentiation of guidelines. And because of that, what happens is that corporates sometimes need some special advice in terms of how are you really going to mitigate that requirement of renewable energy, and how you really move from a thermal or coal-based energy to a renewable energy. So if every state has their own guidelines. So what we used to do is to really study those electricity bills of these companies, and make the roadmap ready for them, and also help them to float RFI and RFP, that is floating a tender basically, to ensure that they get quotations from 4 or 5 companies, and help them to negotiate the best, and also help them with some of the back end documents, so that their contract can be perfected. So this is the basic area of work which we really did in terms of taking the corporates ahead towards the roadmap of sustainability.
Wonderful. Wow, that's quite a challenging path, because you've got to take into different attributes for you to consider this. But to what you rightfully said, right? Like, I think India is a little ahead of the curve when it comes to the S and the G. But from an environment standpoint, there's a lot of education that needs to happen. So if you go to an MNC, you'll have to first look at the current state and then
Correct.
evaluate that, and then also teach them how this
Yeah.
can be adapted and then implement it, and also look at it from a ongoing support as well. So there's a
Yeah.
lot of
Yeah. More importantly is the handholding basically to understand the, regulations and making your, contract or making your facility basically perfecting it from the point of view of the regulations. I think
yeah,
that's a very challenging task.
yeah, awesome.
Yeah.
So next, I want to move to like innovations in finance and fundraising. So since you have a really successful career in finance, so over your career, you've successfully completed various innovative fundraising initiatives. What are
Yeah.
some of the most challenging aspects of fundraising in today's economic climate, especially for projects focused on sustainability?
Yeah. See, one very important parameter that people should understand or is that sustainability, you know, is basically more of a strategic investment scenario.
Mm-hmm.
Because when we talk about sustainability, it in a big way addresses, takes care of, or needs to take care of the energy transition part of it. So when we talk about energy transition, it basically talks about renewable energy. It talks about batteries. It talks about process related, mitigation of process related technologies which can help you mitigate. And then comes the EV part, e-mobility part. So, looking at all this scenario, innovation has been going on in India. People are very, very curious in terms of, putting forth the right solution for various kinds of challenges. So they are trying to do a lot of work in terms of e-mobility for, replacement of permanent magnet motors, which are, globally getting a permanent magnet is always a challenge. So they're trying to go get into newer technologies. They have been successful to a certain extent. Obviously, getting the solution approved by the larger OEMs is always a challenge because OEMs are governed by various regulations in India, and there are regulatory bodies who are actually governing it. So how do you ensure that those products and services can actually fit into the requirements of the OEM? So it will happen over a period of time, but these are all challenging times because approval of the product and getting the approval of the product at the same time, say if somebody is doing some battery chemical, so battery chemical related to say lithium ion or sodium ion or whatever, then he will basically find it challenging because the approval of the product in the process at the laboratory level, at the same time at the manufacturing level, is going to take significant amount of time. So I'm pretty sure that it will not happen below say 12 to 15 months or even 18 months also. So that's where the challenge actually comes. So you need to get in partners who are basically more focused in terms of creating ecosystem, who are very sure about what they want to do over the next 8 to 10 years and are willing to invest and take the path along. And both the partners will have to feel the pain to really come out of that and ensure that they have the deliverable solution. So innovation is the key. Obviously, India is a little behind as compared to China in terms of innovation, but things are really significantly picking up because government is also promoting a lot of R&D. At the same time, government is also giving a lot of incentives through production link incentive schemes, so that those companies or those innovation companies can actually take up those jobs. Government is also promoting a lot of innovation through incubation centers. Government has also created guidelines whereby corporate CSR money can actually be given to innovation through incubation centers. So there are various promoting guidelines and promoting schemes that have been put forth by the government. And I think these are very exciting times for India from an innovation perspective because lot many good things are happening. And if you look at say hydrogen as a fuel of the future, then it's not the case that India doesn't know hydrogen. India consumes around 7 to 8% of the world hydrogen because of having large number of refineries and fertilizer plants, and these two are the major users of hydrogen today. And obviously, that hydrogen is getting generated from LNG, which is imported in India. But obviously, as government is very serious about ensuring that, we have a very clear path in terms of energy sustainability. I think these challenges will obviously get addressed, over a period of time.
Wonderful. You rightly said, there's a complete shift in perception in the way the government of India is also addressing this climate challenge, and they are welcoming a lot of new startups addressing these challenges as well. So whenever I go through articles about the new policies in play related to climate change, it's really heartwarming to read through it, because there's a lot of awareness amongst not just the general public and also the government to see eventually India needs to be self-sufficient. It cannot be so dependent on external energy source. So that's really very heartwarming to hear. Thank you for that. So I want to ask you about policy influencing and advisory roles. I think it's a perfect pivot since you just mentioned about government. You've been involved in policy advisory at high levels, including submissions to Niti Aayog and interactions with key government figures. How important is the role of policy in shaping sustainable practices in India?
So, when you are trying to shape policies, it is important that you put across the right thoughts to the government officials, and when you want to make the policies more amenable to the people, at the same time to the industry also. It is important to look at what will gel with the industry, what kind of financing is required by the industry, what kind of initial support is required, and also looking at when you actually want to frame a policy, you should also try to look at from the perspective that has such a large population of 140 crore people. So what will really benefit those 140 crore people? Because we just cannot over a period of overnight or something, we cannot just pull the plug and say, okay, from tomorrow you start using this kind of technology, because we are a very cost sensitive country, and because of the lower per capita GDP, we obviously need to really worry about what people are spending on issues like energy and related areas. So because energy basically drives life, right? So without energy nothing can actually happen. So
absolutely.
So when you really want to address policies, it is important that you first ensure that for the first prototyping and everything, you have significant amount of government support where things can be taken care of, because initial costs are always higher when you really want to do a new technology. So policies should address these kind of concerns, and policy should also take care of what could possibly come from the government in terms of support for the industry for the next few years. I mean,
Got it.
if you really look at what has happened in the US in terms of Inflation Reduction Act, similar policies have the government of India is also, trying to frame, and they have given significantly higher amount of PLI incentives for companies to really come forward and participate, make that solution available, take those incentives, get their cost, down, and also ensure that long-term business creation, at the same time long-term product and service creation can actually happen. So these are the areas where I think significant amount of thought process has to go in terms of making policies. And you should ensure that the policy overall not only benefits the corporates in terms of making the prototype and making the solution ready, it ultimately should benefit the masses to a large extent over a period of next 3 to 5 years. And over a period of next 7 to 8 years or 10 years, maybe whatever incremental tax collection comes from that, even government also has a chance to recover the investment that they provide in terms of incentives.
Wonderful. Thank you.
Yeah.
So next, I really want to pivot to something which, you said recently also you had a lot of training that you did. So I want to go to, you've been actively involved in training and speaking at various prestigious forums on topics related to ESG and sustainability. Can you share how these engagements influence corporate strategies and the broader sustainability agenda?
Yeah. See, ESG as a concept, or what we call it in India as BRSR, Business Responsibility and Sustainability Reporting, which has started from 22-23. It was the first year was the voluntary reporting. 23-24 is the second year of or the first year of compulsory reporting. So when I interact with people, I've been interacting with people since the last almost 18-24 months on ESG and related concerns. I've been addressing various seminars and conferences, and also participating in creating in models for green hydrogen as part of a team of Swiss-based global NGO, which has been doing a lot of work in India on green hydrogen pricing and policies. So the basic thought process is that India, in reality, all the top 1,000 companies, we actually started with what is called as the business responsibility reporting in 2012-13. So initially it was 100 companies, then it became 500 companies, then it became 1,000 companies. And then that BRR was converted to BRSR, that is business responsibility, and then the sustainability word was added to make it from a sustainability point of view. So, to a certain extent, top 1,000 or top 2,000 companies were really aware of what is BRR, and they were in some way reporting, including the integrated reporting part of it was there in their balance sheets and getting reported on a yearly basis. But when I talk to companies at the tier 1, tier 2 level, obviously the understanding is relatively there at the board level. But at the same time, at the senior management, at the middle management level, the understanding is relatively less. So if I say that I would have probably done 35, 40 presentations in the last 18 months to various companies, people acknowledge that this is a very important and very serious issue, because ESG is being driven more by the investors globally, and that is getting followed by various actions being taken by the various governments in respective countries. But important is that ESG is a management function, and that is why they call ESG has to be coupled with something known as risk management. So in India, we are also supposed to have a chief risk officer for all the top companies, so that they can actually see what are the risks associated. So the earlier function in India or in most of the manufacturing companies was basically EHS, that is environment, health and safety. Or there could be some different nomenclatures for that also in different companies. But most of the EHS employees are now getting the responsibility of ESG. So obviously there is some level of improvement in knowledge or required, because being apart from being a plant function, now it is becoming a management function.
Awesome. Okay.
So, and then if you have to, since you have to address so many risks associated, because then investors will keep asking 100 questions. What are you doing towards, adopting hydrogen? Is it suitable to you? What technologies you want to follow? What is your roadmap for the next 5 years? And these kind of questions have started coming in various investor conferences for listed companies. So,
So it's becoming
investors
like
all,
mandatory. Investors are looking
yeah,
into what the company is focusing on,
correct.
and these days all investors are focusing on
Yeah,
social aspects, right? When they want
correct.
to, they're choosing to invest in a particular
Mm, mm.
organization which is listed. They're
Yeah,
looking at their social responsibility. That has become a very important criteria right now. So in
yeah.
India,
And
like, how is it like, let's say a company which is not yet listed, but aspires to be listed. In that
yeah.
scenario, right from the foundational aspect, are they incorporating the ESG components into their day-to-day operations, just to make sure that eventually when they get listed, that becomes like a mandatory as part of their reporting? So do you have anybody who's reaching out to you from that space and saying that we want to be listed soon, but we've got a long way to go? Is there something that you can help us navigate through that journey?
I mean, I have few fundraising mandates from various companies, but these are all private companies, and they're looking at private equity funds. But I have been interacting with a lot of companies in Pune, because Pune is one of the largest engineering export centers in India. And because of many, I think Pune has something like 500 plus MNC companies who are basically from all over the world, and they are all into not only into software, but they are majorly into manufacturing also. So because of their presence in Pune and their supply chain, I've been interacting with a lot of people on the supply chain side. So they are all under pressure. They really want to implement that, but obviously challenges will come in terms of people. Challenges will
Mhm.
come in terms of adoption of everything, and then their ability to also ensure that they have reasonable profitability being pumped into these kind of future commitments and projects that they really want to do, so that they can probably progress with, say, renewable strategy implementation, or mitigation of process emissions to a great extent, also moving towards, probably electric mobility for their employee movement, or, movement of individual employees, at the same time movement of, factory employees who are coming through, buses, corporate buses to the plant. So people are very, very serious about it, but obviously it's going to take time because, the roadmap has to be built for them. They need to understand the roadmap, and, they have to go one step at a time to ensure that they really focus on, these issues in a step-by-step manner, and then give their commitments to larger companies. Please understand that when SEBI came out with these BRSR, ESG norms in India, not only that, they made, all the top 1,000 companies to really commit to that. The guidelines continuously talk about supply chain in most of the, reporting parameters. So they really want, for you to take care of your supply chain in some form or the other, involvement of supply chain in most of the, issues and concerns, because, a bigger company obviously has, many suppliers, as part of their, value chain or supply chain. And, unless the supply chain is also mitigated to a large extent from, decarbonization or sustainability point of view, it is difficult for the larger company to really, keep improving in terms of their sustainable reporting. So it's like, one large company with 25, 30, 50, 100, suppliers, who really need to address these concerns in a big way, so that, these companies, or larger companies, can actually put forth the right, parameters of reporting in their balance sheet. It is important to understand that most of the tier 1, tier 2 companies who are of reasonably good size and are rightly sized, say from an IPO or public fundraising perspective, it is good for them that they can actually adhere to these roadmaps, and they understand that. And once they adhere to the roadmaps, or at least have the roadmap ready, it is easier for them, and investors will actually appreciate that these companies who are coming to the market for further fundraising, or for initial fundraising, or maybe for second round of fundraising, will be probably committing themselves to a large extent to a tier 1, or, a larger company, OEM, or a larger manufacturer, so that concerns on sustainability are addressed, and investors look at these tier 1, tier 2 companies who are trying to do the fundraise very positively.
Very good. Wonderful. So I recently had a conversation with an individual who's actually a supplier of auto parts to an auto manufacturing company, which is based in India. And again, he is definitely in tier 2 or tier 3. His role is only to, manufacture a part for the automobile. And one of the things I think that company has mandated that he also put in play the ESG aspects into his company, because like you said, the supply chain and the value chain, it's become like a mandatory thing. So he had to bring an organization who is into training and train his employees, and also change the way his day-to-day operations are conducted in the company, which will be in alignment to the ESG principles. So it actually, helps the company which he is supplying the products as well. So it was a very interesting conversation I had with him, the way that everybody's mindset is changing because of this reporting, which is a requirement by SEBI as well. So what you just said is validating that. I think it'll take it's a learning curve in any way, but I think it's a good start, I would say. So I want to focus on now on the impact of G20 engagements. In 2023, you addressed several events linked to the G20 on climate finance and decarbonization. What are the key takeaways from these high-level discussions, and how do they impact policy and business practices in India?
Okay. If you really look at from whatever deliberations had, were there as part of the G20, round of conferences, or associated conferences which are there with the G20. Some of the some of the important events that I was involved into really looked at creating a roadmap for, say, how green hydrogen can be, funding can be created in India, because green hydrogen costs today are much on the high side as compared to what is the gray hydrogen cost today. So if you really want to make green hydrogen, say, cheaper in any country of the world or including India, obviously you need to have a better, funding roadmap. So these kind of
Mhm.
deliberations at the government level, including some not-for-profit organizations as taking lead for, creating such kind of, deliberations or roadmaps was very helpful, because then the right message is going to the government, and also, the inputs are given to various ministries from these kind of, not-for-profit organizations, and also the inputs are given to the bankers to ensure that, funding is available, because most of the projects typically get funded on, on some kind of a fixed debt equity ratio. So, the right messages are actually going. As far as some of the deliberations for renewable energy are concerned, those deliberations were helpful from the point of view of creating more penetration of, say, renewable energy in rural areas, including, adoption of storage as a solution, because storage is currently not cheap. But fortunately, with the falling battery cost, the storage cost has also come down. Some of the recent tenders in India are very, very low rate tenders for storage also. So things are becoming better, and the policies in terms of penetration of these technologies at all the levels, including the grid level support, I think are picking up in India, and they will definitely get benefited with the kind of support that is being extended by both central government and state governments.
Awesome. Wonderful.
Yeah. Yeah.
Thank you. So I want to also ask about, based on what you have seen, right, and the experience you've had last 33 years,
Mhm.
both in finance and then pivoting into ESG, and now you are an active member, making sure that you're training the organizations as well as providing your consulting opportunities. So, what are the future trends and predictions? Like, as someone who is a finger on the pulse of global trends, what are some emerging sectors of technologies that businesses should be paying attention to right now?
Uh, See, India has been a very, very successful player as far as global, software is concerned, software services market is concerned. Our software, uh, business, if you look at bigger companies like, Infosys, Tata Consulting, and all the bigger, giants of software, they have done very well for themselves, and they've done very well for the country also. And they have been a great support, great service support to most of the global multinational companies for whom, they do the work. I think the bigger opportunities will come for India in terms of, creating products and services focused majorly on newer areas of energy and mobility. I think that probably will become one of the largest markets. Another area which I feel could be of significant importance to India, because we are having a great strength in terms of engineers who are probably one of the best in the world, and also have significant understanding of technologies globally. And how do you really mix, say, operational technologies on the power or the renewable side with, say, software services integration, to ensure that you create products which are of low cost, but which can actually have a global applications, and also address the low cost product requirements from, some of the developing countries, so that those products can be offered to these countries at a reasonable cost. I think that is something which I feel is a very extremely important area in terms of, global opportunity for Indian companies. Obviously, we are seeing, global GCC cost centers being set up in India for, most of the European and American companies, in terms of, and those are getting incrementally, put up or implemented, those kind of projects in India. So I think there is definitely, a rush. If you look at, say, Zoho for that example, they are operating out of the most remotest of the villages in Tamil
Yeah, like
Nadu.
tier two and tier three
Tier three, yeah.
cities, exactly. Tirunelveli,
Yeah.
yeah.
And they are doing work for some of the largest companies globally. So, the village boys also, who can actually speak good English, is also addressing concerns of, some of the largest customers. So I think that's a wonderful model to really, which has been created. And I think that that's one big area. And other than this, I think because of whatever problems are happening in the neighborhood of India, I think pharmaceutical APIs and all could be the large opportunity for India because Indian scientists actually understand chemistry very well. And
Mm-hmm.
I think that could be a significant opportunity. And other than this, I think the shift in focus from say or probably an opportunity to look at mitigating risk. Most of the US and European companies are probably looking at China plus one strategy. I think that will definitely benefit Indian companies. So these two, three are going to be made big areas of work for Indian companies, and corporates and in the coming days. And I think most of the multinationals will look at supporting Indian companies because it ultimately addresses their concerns of low cost outsourcing and also benefits them, monetarily.
Yeah, you're absolutely right.
Yeah,
Like you rightfully said, now since almost all the companies, multinationals within India, are not just sticking to tier one cities, they're willing to experiment going into tier two and tier three cities, which
yeah,
also gives a lot of job opportunities to those workforce which is available there, and they don't have to come to tier one cities with a
right.
higher cost of living. So again, economical as well. So that
Yeah.
actually
And
impacts.
the most important parameter is that telecom costs in India are significantly lower.
Ah, so that also is a huge advantage.
Yeah,
Wonderful.
yeah,
Yeah.
yeah,
So then I think it's a perfect pivot now. So advice to aspiring entrepreneurs and leaders, right? So now you said, all the major companies have done extremely good in the software industry. And of course, India is known for that throughout the world. So
yeah.
now, what advice would you give to young entrepreneurs or leaders who aspire to make a significant impact in the field of sustainable development and renewable energy, so that it can be a global impact, like how the software industry took off, right? So
Yeah.
what advice would you give?
I think from a sustainability point of view, it is important to create solutions which can be low cost solutions. So, say for example, uh, say biomass to hydrogen.
Mm-hmm.
How that can probably become a very low cost solution for the world, and making a multiple feed sort of a technology which can actually help you using different kinds of raw materials and converting them into hydrogen or any other kind of a fuel. Or I think these kind of technologies will definitely help because it is something which is which is there in the world but not low cost. So I
Got it.
think these are areas which will help. Other than this, I think because of most of the Indian engineers are already working overseas or have plans to come back to India, with their experience and expertise of having worked with large global companies in Europe and US, I think they probably understand the software market very well. And I think India needs to move from a services-based economy in software to more product-based economy in the future. And I think creating those kind of products, I think, is the real need for India, and that's where the bigger, or the larger part of the software, teams or crowd, which is probably wanting to come back to India, should really look at this as an opportunity because cost of living in India is still not really that high as compared to the world, and they can still put in 2, 3, 4 years of good effort to create something which can be acceptable by the world in terms of it being a product.
Yeah.
I think these two are
No, you
major
rightfully
opportunities.
said. I think
Yeah,
the mindset itself needs to change from being a service oriented to product oriented. And I think
correct.
that, especially when you come into the field of entrepreneurship, that is extremely important, right? Predominantly, the way the culture has been in India is like
Yeah,
we're all service oriented. We get an education, we want to go and work for an organization, and spend 30 years there, retire, and then that's what we've done. But that pivot in thinking, wherein we also can be good at coming up with innovative products that can be of service to the entire world. And that's a
yeah,
shift in thinking, which will definitely take India to the next level. I completely agree with you on that.
yeah,
So moving on to education. So when I was going through your profile, this was very interesting for me. So given your extensive qualifications and your role as a faculty member at the Institute of Directors, How
Uh-huh.
important is formal education and training in advancing sustainability and ESG principles within corporate governance?
Yeah, see, important thing is that you first understand the subject. I think what is required. Breakup of all sustainable issues, whether it is related to, say, electricity, whether it is related to process, whether it is related to mobility, whether it is related to, say, buildings, or whether it is related to, recycle or reuse of the raw material, waste management, because, understanding that as a subject is very, very important, because without that, it is difficult for you to really look at creating solutions, because whether you want to, say, produce syngas from municipal solid waste and use that syngas for some other further processing, is something that will come only out of your learning and experience at various organizations, or various projects based things. I think that is something that will help you to think about what can be the next level of solution for these kind of projects, and look at sustainability in a big way. Uh, Looking at all these, I think formal education is very, very important. Obviously, there are certain, less than, say, 1% of the people who really don't need education. They are themselves extraordinarily talented and innovative in terms of the approach, and are in a position to create those some of these solutions. But education is important in the sense that when you have the product ready, how do you go to the market? How do you
Mhm.
go to the investors? Because transition or sustainability is a strategic investment matter. It is not something that can happen, overnight, or it is going to happen in, say, 2 or 3 years. It's a painful area. So when you create solutions on sustainability out of your experience and learning of the past, you need to partner with somebody who's relatively bigger, and the bigger companies will not come on table unless they find it attractive. So when if how do you make those things attractive for these kind of companies, is that you have clarity on what you have developed, you are able to pitch the right solution to these kind of companies, looking at their strategic areas of interest, and how the business should be actually crystallized, or how the ideation can actually be absorbed by these kind of companies. I think will require a lot of learning in terms of it's a commercial and a business deal. So people need to really understand. You might have advisors in place at point of time like me, but as founders, as promoters, you really need to understand those wells, because I can add value to a transaction to the extent of X percentage, but at some point of time, the investors or the strategic investors will always look at what is the understanding of the founders and promoters of the company, these respective companies. So I think knowledge is very important. So basic understanding to have ensure that you really are on the right path, and you know are able to do the critical analysis of what mistakes you are doing, and taking the right
Mm.
steps to go to the next level, I think is very important for the founders.
Founders of the company. So it is important, not just, I think it's a beautiful point you brought. You can, bring external consultants and management consultants and advisors, but if the leadership within the organization doesn't understand the problem statement, it cannot be translated well, because they are the ones who are going to address the board of, directors and investors. If they are not able to articulate exactly what the problem statement is and why this consultant or the consulting company was hired, and how you're actually putting this roadmap together for the next 5 years in order to mitigate it, I
Yeah.
think that learning needs to happen, because the leaders need to buy into it. I think you put it the perfect way. You're absolutely right. So the last question I have for you is future of green technologies. You've been part of significant discussions and committees on future mobility and green technologies like hydrogen and battery storage. What breakthroughs do you foresee that could revolutionize these sectors?
I think from the perspective of batteries, I think sodium and battery solution, because is available in abundance world over, and it is also available in abundance in India. So I think low cost sodium and battery solution, which is, say, perfected from a manufacturing point of view, and expectations on the energy efficiency part, I think will revolutionize the way batteries are getting produced and being used in India. Second could be that some of the companies in India are have already developed ICE hydrogen solutions. So some of the companies are keen to look at fuel cell as a solution, but some of the companies are very keen to look at ICE hydrogen, which is internal combustion engine being tuned to retrofitted with hydrogen availability or hydrogen usage or hydrogen as a fuel, and then it getting used as a permanent solution for transportation or long distance travel. Hydrogen as a solution is perfect in terms of long distance for say anything more than 350 to 400 kilometers on a daily basis. So I think these kind of technology which are getting created by few of the companies in here in India would really be the path breaking from a world point of view. Because ICE hydrogen solution, a lot of people are trying globally, but to produce something which is cheap and relatively low cost, and also have the ability to say use hydrogen which is locally produced, which may not be completely green hydrogen, but it may be a blue hydrogen. So if they have the ability to use that and make the solution run on Indian roads, I think that will be the most path-breaking thing from Indian perspective. And obviously improving the efficiency of solar panels from some of the Indian companies who are trying to do that to improve the efficiency, say beyond 20%, 18 to 20%. I think will be the next important area, because we so much of sun energy is available actually throughout the day, but how much we really absorb that energy to store it for the peak hours in the evening or next day morning, I think will determine the way things will actually get shaped on the renewable side in the coming days.
Wonderful. Thank you so much. So, Mr. Chandrasekhar, your insights today have not just been informative but inspiring. Thank you for sharing your deep knowledge and for your ongoing commitment to shaping a sustainable future through innovative financial strategies and ESG practices. So, final thoughts, do you have anything for our listeners?
I think the world should really, at this point of time, focus on sustainability as the biggest, survival point for the humanity, because we are seeing so many issues and problems in terms of excess flooding, etc. happening, so much of rainfall, and ice getting melted. So because of all these issues and problems, sustainability seems to be at the peak, and I would put a very simple thing that earlier say sustainability was in a way not really getting addressed the way it should be. It was probably in the boardroom sort of a scenario. It was below the table earlier. Now it is above the table. At the same time, it is above the board of directors. I think that's a very important message that we should carry. And sustainability is something which is like somebody is sick at home, and you need to have you need to withdraw your savings to ensure that that person is cared properly and taken care of properly through the savings. So sustainability cannot be on borrowed money. It has to be on long-term strategic money that should be put across to ensure that we follow the basic principle of triple bottom line. That people, planet, and profit really come forward in the desired way in the coming decade, and also helps us to really leave a better world for the next generation in the coming days. So I think that's a very important message that I really want to give at the end, and I think this is what the real purpose for which Sustainable Development Guidelines, Sustainable Development Goals of United Nations, all these 17 goals have actually been put across, and most of the companies here in India and world over are trying to follow those 17 Sustainable Development Goals.
Yeah.
So thank you so much.
No, thank you so much for bringing that, to say that how important that even in a regular human being have to adopt to sustainability. So it's not corporate organizations or every citizen of this world has a responsibility towards sustainability. And so you kind of summarized it beautifully. So thank you so much. To our listeners, we hope this episode has enriched your understanding and motivated you to consider how sustainability can be integrated in your professional and personal lives. Keep tuning into Planet Forward with Preetha for more enlightening conversations that help us all move towards a greener, more sustainable future. Thank you for joining us, and until next time, let's keep pushing the boundaries of what's possible for our planet. Goodbye.
Thank you for tuning in to the Planet Forward with Preetha, conversations for a greener future. Together, we're exploring the innovations and stories that inspire us to think and act for a sustainable world. If you're inspired by today's conversation and want to be part of this journey toward a greener future, make sure to subscribe to our podcast on your favorite platform. By subscribing, you'll never miss an episode filled with groundbreaking ideas and actionable solutions. Let's continue to make a difference, one episode at a time. I'm Preetha, reminding you to make every day count for our planet. Until next time, keep moving the planet forward.